see. We have 3 friends so far. Let's see who's there. We have Xin Yi, Wen Huang, and Jingwen. Wen Huang and Jingwen, can you please change your name to your preferred first name and your startup team that you're doing a project for? And you can turn your cameras on. Today's a camera on day. Oops, I forgot to change my background to say that. Let me change my background. There we go. Hey, Henry. If you can just switch your name to, I'm pretty sure you're a Semio person, Henry Semio. I'm getting better at remembering your teams. And also, I encourage you guys to put your faces on. It's kind of a cold day, so it's okay if you're like in sweats. Close my window. I love it, but for now, you're on your own, okay? Good idea. All right, we are building up a group. It's still a few minutes till start, so we'll wait a little bit. Snehal, our winner from last year, I still haven't seen a picture of whatever you ordered for food.
I'm saving it for a rainy day.
Oh, okay. It's almost a rainy day today. Yeah, it's just so exciting. Like when I pitched, full disclosure, when I pitched the idea to the office, because you know, for budgeting and stuff, you have to like get everything approved. And usually, let me start admitting people. Is Cami here yet? Still no cams. When we do an in-person Summer Smasher, we provide snacks. Well, we provide snacks at the garage for our teams throughout the year. And then we have to do like 3 times the amount of snacks during Summer Smasher because there's a bunch of people at the garage. And so I was like, the least you guys could do is give me some Postmates gift cards to give out to students for participating. It was a really easy sell. Let's see. We're still building up a group. Remember today's rules are very different from masterclass. And then just a quick reminder to change your name to your preferred first name and your startup team. A lot of that is for us to keep reminding ourselves who you're working with. And then also for Cammie's sake, oh, and she just got here, so that she can take proper attendance. Speaking of attendance, I'm gonna make Cammie a co-host. Speaking of attendance, I emailed a few people who've missed some Zooms and how to do that, but just to tell you guys as a group, again, on our Slack channel, Summer Smasher Project Support, I post all the masterclass videos, and then there's just like an expectation that you watch it and then write like 5 things about it. I still would like for you to tell me ahead of time that you're not going to be able to make it, because in an effort to help you guys get some real world experience and train for professionalism out in the real world, not to say that you guys haven't had really important jobs up until this point, but it is a very good habit is to let people know ahead of time when you're going to miss something. And so it's just something we expect for Summer Smasher participants. We have a 3 strikes rule for missing the Zoom calls. Within a reasonable amount, if you tell us ahead of time that you're not going to make it, we give you an opportunity to make up those Zoom calls and it doesn't affect your towards the 3 strikes. We're really happy to be super helpful and flexible. Okay, everybody who's just joining, reminder, change your name to your preferred first name and your startup team. Soon you'll just be doing it like nobody's business. quick funny story. So my 8-year-old, she had to do Zooms for class, and there weren't any strict rules for how they named themselves. And so every day Lucella would change my name to Lucella the Queen. And that was her name in her class for like all of her Zoom calls was Lucella the Queen.
Good for her.
All right, it's looking like we got about 18 friends. I encourage you guys for Storytelling Wednesday to turn your videos on. It's just because it's a great opportunity for us to see each other. I think it's important to put faces to names. I've been really excited getting to know you guys through the Instagram, which has been going really well. Learning all about you guys. This week is all about food. I'm learning about where's good places to eat, what's good comfort food. If I don't know if anyone answered today's question, which I think, Cami, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be? Where's my cell phone? It'd be great if I could see if anyone answered it. And then reminder that if you answer the get to know you questions, for each time you answer one, and there's 5 a week, your name will be entered in the Postmates raffle on Founder Friday to get $25 towards something delicious for the weekend or whatever. So if you answer all 5, you get your names 5 times in there. Snehal, I just bugged him about what he's eaten. He says he's saving it for a rainy day. We'll see what happens. Maybe a rainy date. I don't know. $25, that's a lot of food for one person. Oh, here, wait, let's see. We have one person. I'm getting better at the waiting room. So I'm learning. I has brain. Okay, so really quick, I'm going to share my screen because I think it's important for us to continue to use an agenda for these meetings. Let's see, how do I do that? Share, share, share. All right. Cami, if you can just keep an eye out on the waiting room, please.
Make me a co-host.
Oh, I thought I did. Oh, I must have made somebody else a co-host.
Made me a co-host.
Yeah, but then I'm pretty sure I made another person. If you're co-host, behave. Yes, I do. Okay, Cami.
Mm-hmm.
Housekeeping. So I'm hoping that there's not a lot to housekeep as of yet. But I do want to give you guys an opportunity at least midweek to tell me if you guys are having any troubles quickly or anything that I can do for you that has come up recently. So, and obviously if it's something more sensitive, you can always sign up for my availability on Thursdays to problem solve, or just shoot me an email. But is everything going okay so far? Projects and Zoom calls and all of that. Is everyone doing well this summer? Yes? Okay. Silence, I feel like, means yes. Now, the thought exercise was developed by Dana, who I will introduce in a second. And basically, the question was, what do written and shared goals solve with teams and businesses? So I think Cami did a really good job on Instagram answering that question. And then we collected your answers and I just plopped them into a word cloud generator. And so it's a little pixelated, but basically if you look at this, you can probably come up with some pretty interesting sentences based off of the words that you guys use the most often and then some of the additional words. So for instance, team is big, all and same, you can see why those words would come up often. Members, people, goals, and then kind of the things that you guys were more on a smaller scale saying were things like fulfillment, objective, cohesive, contributing. So if you were to pull together some of these words like teams, effectively, let's see, accomplishing common goals, I feel like that's a really good sentence pulled out to answer that question. So I think these word clouds are really fun. I'm just going to continue to do them with the thought exercises. And if you guys want to see them after today's session, I can always just put them in the Slack. Okay, so back to our agenda. I'd like to introduce you to Dana Aiken. I'll say something very briefly, but I'll let her introduce herself more deeply. Dana is our newest innovator in residence at the Garage. The Garage offers many things to our startup teams. One of the most valuable things that we offer are mentors who are in residence who set themselves up to be available to basically strategically advise our teams short-term and long-term and answer questions and give them advice. Right now we have about 6 IIRs, and Dana is our latest and greatest. She is so knowledgeable. She's also very supportive. Every single time I've reached out to her to talk with her about anything, she's like 100% invested, in including with Summer Smashers. So thank you so much for joining us, Dana. I'm gonna pass it to you to give them a better understanding of your background, and then you can go ahead and just slide right into your deck when you're ready.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much. This is super fun for me, so I appreciate everybody's attention on this today. Over the last 25 years, I've been working with a variety of different startups. In fact, I've been with 6 total, and as well as mid-sized companies, but primarily leading global operations and sales strategies, specifically in the area of go-to-market. And there's, again, what we were talking about, what's fun for me in this program is when you've been in so many startups, you start to see some patterns, you start to see some different things that happen. And so being involved with the Startup Garage and being able to share some of those things, gosh, I wish somebody had done that for me back in the day. But let's go ahead and I will start sharing. Make sure I'm doing this. Can everybody see the first slide? Okay, perfect. So feel free to, as we're going through this, either to use chat or if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. I may tell you that, hey, we're going to address that. But before I jump into my actual story, I wanted to have a little bit of context ahead of time. So I did prepare a few slides for us. But again, when you've gone through 6 startups, you start to see a lot of patterns that emerge. And one of the biggest patterns has to do with a lot of chaos that happens, especially in those first, early years of a startup. And the reason has to be, uh-oh, why am I not advancing? Let's see. Hang on, people. There we go. Okay. So a lot of it has to do with you start out with an idea and you think, okay, super simple. I'm just going to go figure out as a founder or an innovator, I'm going to say that there's a problem out there that I have to solve. I'm going to build, a working model towards it. I'm going to talk to some customers and woohoo, they're going to magically pay me. But those first couple months, years, there are a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos that happens amongst the team, prior to getting to this point of traction. And is it any wonder that I think the statistic is about 90% of startups don't actually get to this traction? So, you say to yourselves, well, why is that if it's just, we're solving a problem, building a product and talking to customers? Well, it's because without an action plan, the executives become a prisoner of events. And I would say insert executive for an individual. I mean, this period of chaos that happens, being able to focus everybody on what's really the problem and what's really going to happen is so critical to start getting to this traction. So that's what we're going to talk about. My objective is to provide you, an overview of collaborative goal setting. And it's really things that I have personally done and have seen that are very successful to help give people a vaccine against what I call the shiny object syndrome of, hey, let's build this. Hey, let's do that feature. Let's do this, because that becomes fuzzy execution. And it becomes almost impossible then to manage through that chaos in the early years. The way we'll go about doing that today is I'm going to review a couple goal models with you, probably things that you have heard in your classes, or maybe your parents or other people that you have interacted with, that talked about different goaling, what those definitions are. Then I'm going to show you one that I've personally done in several companies, give you some illustrative examples around that, and discuss how it worked for me on a personal level. So the storytelling, because again, as we go through this, the theme is ideas are easy, but execution is everything. Before we get real started into the content, let's go ahead and do a quick poll. I'd like to know how many of you have actually developed goals and had to report on them on a weekly basis, or even if it's not weekly, just on a regular basis. And while you're going through that, do I have to end it, or will you? RC?
Oops, I'll end it.
Okay, well, we can leave it open for a few minutes.
Sure.
While we're going through that, let's talk about what the goal models really look like. So the ones that are really common out there that you may hear are, the SMART model, which is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. That's a lot of words. Then there's the MBO, management by objective. You'll also hear the terminology KPI. Now, I'm going to argue in a minute that I really don't think that this is a goal model, but hold on to that for a second. It's important that you understand, for vocabulary's sake, what it means. Key performance indicator. Then there's objective measurable goal, formerly known as OMG, not to be confused for oh my God, although if you're in sales, you will say to yourself, oh my God, I just got a goal. The one that I like has to do with what we call objective and key results, and that's the OKR process. Sorry, here we go. It's based on a book called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. But before we go any further, let's end the poll and see where we're at. Okay, so 88% said yes, and 12% said no. Do you want to go ahead and share? Actually, I can. We'll just share the results with everybody. That's kind of interesting to me, because there is a California study that said people who recorded their goals and sent weekly progress reports attained 43% more of their objectives than those who merely thought about it and didn't share it. So again, in those early days, when you're trying to get traction out there and you're trying to get people to buy your product, to be able to say that you are 43% more, dialed in and achieving your goals is really something that is very interesting and certainly contributes to the success of getting over into that 10% that make it. Okay. More on the book a little bit, again, just to give us context. So Andy Grove introduced this to Intel back in 1975. John Doerr, the author of the book, was an intern at that time, and will tell you in the book that this changed everything for him. So lean in, take some good notes. You never know what you're going to learn over this next 6 to 8 weeks of your life that could be life-changing for you. So John came out of this and certainly went through his career and became an investor in the Silicon Valley. He decided to invest in a little company called Google, and sat down with Larry and the team very early when they had less than 30 employees, and brought this process to Google. And you'll see, if you do read the book, that Larry Page basically says it was this process that got them over the hump into what they are today. What it is, it's a methodology that helps to ensure that the company focuses efforts on the same important issues throughout the whole entire organization. Because again, as you start to scale, as you start to grow, or even if it's 3 people in a room, you will have very different opinions about what you think the problem is you're trying to solve, let alone how you're going to do it. So the objective is, what are you trying to achieve? And the key result is, how are you going to achieve that? You may have noticed a little bit of subliminal advertising. I set the agenda up that way. What are we going to achieve today? How am I going to do that? The objectives can be committed, and an example of that would be, hey, I'm going to do my paper by Friday night. I'm committing to that. Or aspirational. I'm going to do my paper by Friday night and the extra credit. Now, one could argue that just getting your paper done by Friday night is the aspirational, but I'll let you guys figure that out. Anyways, the key results need to be time-bound. You have to have a due date on it. It's got to be measurable, and you have to be able to verify what you've measured. And I'll show you specific examples. But let me stop for a second and take a moment to go back to KPIs. So key performance indicators. A lot of companies will use this in their vocabulary as almost goal setting. The reason that I argue that it's not really a goal setting process is because your key performance indicators are business metrics that will inform your key results. So in other words, you're going to say something like, I'm going to have a dashboard that shows me all of my support tickets. That is a key area of my business that would inform, well, how many support tickets are we getting as a result to maybe an objective or key result. And we'll look at more of that in a minute. One of the quotes from the book that I love, and I've used this in many of my trainings with many of my teams, if you try to focus on everything, you focus on nothing. A lot of the times I say that, listen, you can't boil the ocean, guys, because we've all got great ideas. We got to pick the right pans to boil. And just, it sounds very simple, but again, when you are firing on all cylinders and you're working through different problems and you're whiteboarding and you've got 5 whiteboards going, you have to know how to focus on what's really going to move the needle and what matters. Google wasn't the only company, if you do choose to read this book, which I highly recommend, that was listed in the book as picking this up and really saying that it kind of changed the trajectory. I mean, MyFitnessPal, Twitter, Box, Adobe, Intuit, Bono. So individuals are quoted in the book too, that, it was not only by writing things down, but really sharing it and then also asking for continuous feedback. Bono quoted in the book, if you don't have clear sign-offs to your goals, you get overlap and dissonance and people get confused. Think about it. How many times have you walked out of your team exercise and first of all, nobody wrote anything down. You went home and you're like, what am I supposed to do? Or maybe you did write it down, but you still aren't clear and you don't talk about it all semester or all quarter, and then you wonder why you didn't achieve anything. So this process isn't just about writing it down. You have to iterate on it constantly. You have to talk to everybody about it. Okay, so let's get into the meats and potatoes on exactly how it works. Very simple example. Let's say over the course of your internship here, one of the founders comes to you and says, listen, we want to relaunch our mobile app and get it all updated by September. Great. How are we going to do that? Design and build 3 new features by June. I need fewer than 2 bugs on those features when it goes through a QA process. I'd like to get an average of a 4-star rating on the App Store by September and secure a top 100 position for our segment by September as well too. Now remember, I said there was 3 things that key results needed. They need to be time bound. So again, when you're writing these things down, you have to say by when. They need to be measurable. So you're saying, well, how am I going to measure these things? And then they also need to be verifiable. I can go to the App Store and verify this. I can go to a dashboard and verify this. I can go someplace and make sure that what I have said I wanted to achieve, I'm verifying that it actually happened. Also, take a look at this. There's not 42 key results here. You know, if you're really writing the objective very clearly, you only need about 3 to 5 key results to measure it. One of the exercises that I went through recently at my last company is we were rolling this out amongst all the executive teams. And I sat down with the head of legal, who originally created like, I don't know, 15 objectives during the quarter. And, you know, we were talking through it and I said, dude, it's not a to-do list. You know, we have to pick, you know, what is really going to move the needle with the team. And it was an iterative process. We really had to go through it, but we finally came down to 3 that really made sense. And then, you know, tight key results that he could measure throughout that process as well too. One other example, interlock. So interlock is about letting everybody know, whether it's, again, 2 founders, 3 founders, or it's a, you know, 5,000 person company. It's everybody needs to know what we're driving towards. So the objective might be design and launch a user experience that's so intuitive that we're never going to get a support call. Great. How? Make sure that all the wireframes are 100% of the customer's requirements. Fabulous. Who's got the customer requirements? Okay. So that might be the product, might be product marketing, might be you. You this summer might be calling the customers saying, here's what our demo looks like. We'd like to know if this is meeting your needs. Another key result, I want fewer than 1 US related customer service inquiry per week starting in June. Okay, who takes the support calls? Find that person, make sure they understand that this is what we're measuring. And then scale. I'd like 100,000 people to be able to use the platform by the end of the quarter. Well, that might be talking to somebody about, does AWS scale to that? You know, are we going to shut down everything if we get 50,000 users? You know, again, involving everybody in the conversation and then discussing it on a regular basis is key to the success of how this process works. Again, one of the DNAs of startups is you have to be connected, you have to be quick, you have to be flexible. And that's what this process and collaboration forces everybody to think about doing. Okay, so let me bring it all together in a personal story that everybody should recognize this logo. Blackboard Connect. So Blackboard is obviously the learning management system that you would log on and do different things with your instructors. But the Connect piece was purchased by Blackboard. Prior to that, it was a startup that I was in 2004 and 2008 called ConnectEd. And when I joined the company, it was less than $1 million. There was only about 14, 15 people. I was the 4th person that they hired to help with sales, the only woman that they had hired to help with sales. And at the time, they were saying, okay, we've got this technology that allows us to call everybody all at once. And they were using it for realtors because they thought the problem to solve was, hey, there's so many listings in the Hollywood Hills with a fabulous view. If we could just call everybody at once, we'll get more realtors that will want to buy this to call all their constituents to say that there's a house for sale. Lo and behold, they weren't getting a lot of traction. So they needed to go get some angel funding. The investor looked at this and said, no, I've got the problem. The problem is my kids just came from elementary and they're now in middle school and the communication has gone to shit. We have nothing. I went from talking to my elementary school teacher on a weekly basis to now I've got these backpack memos, or I get this that's all crumpled up and I get this call that's warbled. I don't know what's going on anymore. So through a lot of iteration, through a lot of conversation, we decided that the problem that we were going to solve was in K-12 and in colleges. The current technology that they were using was too slow and unreliable, delaying critical communication. That if we could improve that, that all kinds of magic would happen where parents were better involved in their child's education and students at colleges were, you know, directed in a different way and also had less concerns around safety. Okay. What was the objective if that was the problem we were going to solve? Well, the first thing we did is we sat down and we said, provide every U.S. K-12 and college the ability to message parents and students within minutes. Again, I'm going to remind you, this was in 2004. This was cutting edge, you know, in this industry for sure. I mean, nobody was really texting yet, let alone mass notifying everybody at the same time. How we were going to go about doing this is we said we wanted to get 10% penetration in K-12. And mind you, there's 56 million students in K-12. So that was pretty aspirational. We wanted to sign up 2 of the top 10 school districts. Again, how? LAUSD? How are we going to get them? And sign 10 colleges. We also knew that based on the problem we were solving, we couldn't just have a go-to-market objective. We had to have a product objective as well, which the product needed to be simple. It had to be for non-technical users because we made the decision, again, through a lot of conversation and iteration, that we weren't going to sell this at the IT technical level. We were going to sell it to provosts, presidents, and superintendents. Unheard of. Even textbook vendors weren't communicating at that level, let alone making sales. But we're a startup. We didn't know we couldn't do it. And so we put it down, we wrote it on a piece of paper, and we said, okay, if we want to make it simple for non-technical users, it has to be 100% reliable on message delivery, which means we're going to create a SaaS product. This was very, very early in the game of SaaS, software as a service. We also said to ourselves, we're going to have 8 customer workshops in the first year. Secret, we only had 10 customers. So this meant we had to go figure out how to get 8 workshops out of those 10, or start going to other places where we could get more customer feedback. We wanted to secure 2 SLAs with tier 2 telcos, service level agreement. And a tier 2 telco is a local service provider, not a Verizon or an AT&T. We found out that it was cheaper if we went local, but we had to have 2 for redundancy. So that way, again, we go back to our objective of message reliability. And then finally, because of customer feedback, we knew we had to have dashboards. So everybody knew that the message got through or what % didn't. And then it was simple from that point forward. We needed to talk about it on a weekly basis. And what's phenomenal for me is not only the results of what happened over the 4 years prior to our purchase by Blackboard, but the fact that it's been 16 years and I remember it like it's yesterday. I still communicate to the original people. We were a force to be reckoned with. We basically in 4 years went from $1 million to 54 million, which again in startup land, once you passed by certain milestones, investors become very interested. They feel like you've gotten that traction, you've gotten validation. And obviously we had a very successful exit with Blackboard purchasing us. But again, as far as when I look back across my career and the things that changed who I am today and how successful I've been, this group of individuals, how we decided to write these down, talk to each other on a regular basis, and stick to the program. And I will tell you, some of these KRs we blew, right? We didn't get 2 of the top 10 school districts the first year. It took us till year 3. We certainly didn't get any colleges out the gate. But the fact that we were so committed to, we knew this was the problem, we knew this was what we were trying to solve, and we were flexible enough to have results, to almost fail fast and then to get new results, really is what made us so successful in a short period of time. And to be able to get that type of revenue in 4 years is a very short period of time for startups. Okay, let me leave you with some just parting thoughts on this piece, and then we'll open it up for more questions and collaboration. What I learned is, again, as I took this to other organizations and teams, is that everybody in the organization has to adopt it. It just didn't work, you know, nicely when I went to the next company and my team had it, but nobody in finance, legal, or anybody else had it. I mean, we had to be able to adopt what the process was across the whole entire company for it to be successful. OKRs have to be transparent too. You have to have feedback. I love this quote in the book from Sheryl Sandberg: to reap the full benefits of the OKRs, you know, you have to have feedback internal. Otherwise, how do you get better? It's so true. And as human beings, sometimes we're very afraid to get that feedback. It is absolutely necessary that you're open to that for this process. The OKRs are a work in progress. They're not chiseled in stone. And a lot of times companies will get hung up on that. It's like, okay, I'm going to set my goals for this quarter, and I spend all quarter long trying to figure out how to set the goals because, you know, if I don't achieve them, I've therefore failed. No, there is a process. And again, definitely in DevOps, when you hear as you're, you know, creating things, sometimes you just want to fail fast. Figure something out, fail fast. It didn't work, start again. The point is that you need to be able to be flexible to recognize it, and that comes through, again, the interlock and talking. But startups do need focus. So a lot of times startups will say, well, you know, we're not that big. We've got 3 people. We've got 10 people. I'm not going to take the time to do this because we all know. Regardless of size and funding, this process, I'm telling you, makes or breaks a lot of companies because, again, it keeps you focused. When you start to have customer feedback, the ideas, the chaos, the conversation, it just keeps coming and coming. And you have to have a sanity check of somebody saying, no, remember, we agreed on this. Let's try this. Keep focused on that. And then we'll look at the next one. And OKRs do show value. You know, when you go for early funding cycles, there's not a lot of data that you can give back to those early investors. But if you can show them that you've got a clear plan and focus and what that is starting to look like, you're showing them what good looks like. That is value to an investor. Okay, let me stop there and open it up for more questions.
Okay, everyone, please just like, you can use the little hand raising option, or you can use the chat function, or what I encourage you guys to do is just like turn your video on and ask directly. I'll kick off a question right off the bat. So I would imagine that the initial meeting when you're trying to just define the problem would probably be the most challenging of all of the meetings, just because there are so many different ways to define a problem, or even just once you've defined that problem, how to directly address it, right? So like that would be my assumption, but like, what do you think is the biggest challenge in developing OKRs from your experience?
Yeah, defining the initial problem is definitely part of the process. But again, it's the iteration, you know, even with that template of what I handed out to everybody, and I've learned that over time, right? I really thought, okay, I've got a template. I'm going to give it to all the executives. They're going to go away with their team with a nice little deck, and they'll figure it out and they'll come back because it's so simple. We had probably no less than 5, 6, 7 meetings. And then that was just for the individuals. And then we would have to have probably that many more meetings with the group because of the interlock. Because whatever I was doing, I needed to make in the go-to-market piece, I needed to make sure that engineering and product were on board. And did they have this in their objectives and their key results? Because if they didn't, then we weren't going to be aligned and we would fail. So then it created this whole nother, you know, conversation. But if you know that's what's happening going in, then most people, you know, will get that, okay, even though this is frustrating, it's a process, it's a good process. And when you get on the other side, it's like, all right, you know what? This is really fun.
Do you have any tips on how to get buy-in from people who are reticent to like adapt to this type of model of work and workflow? For instance, you know, there are people who seem to just be allergic to meetings in general, right? They think that they go in and thinking that the meeting will be a waste of time, and so that's how they approach the situation. And I'm assuming that when you have these shared goals, like every person is pretty important, their role is pretty integral, and you need them to buy in, or do you not? Like, how do you address kind of like interpersonal challenges when trying to set up something so interlocked and connected?
You know, what's interesting about the process is it's really no different than when you're going in front of a customer or in front of investors. I mean, each person in the room has their own personal agenda, right? Their own personal bias. I tend to, in general, you know, early in my career, in my sales process, definitely in my consulting piece, I come from a space of education. So I like to share a lot about, you know, again, the case studies, the why. You know, there's some great TED Talks out there, Simon Sinek, of, you know, selling to the why. So if you can appeal to the person of why does this matter to them, and each person in the room is going to be a little bit different, but obviously in a startup, the why is we need to get, you know, the product sold. So you know, you're pulling together the why for us and then the why for the individual.
I wonder if it's easier to kind of pull together and effectively strategize on this level in the startup world more than it is kind of in bigger companies, just because everyone's wearing multiple hats. Everyone's kind of already subscribed to the grind too. Everyone realizes that it's like not easy work and that you're going to have to wear multiple hats. And so I'm assuming that it's probably easier to work cohesively and with this kind of structure when you're in a startup. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's also like a kind of a tipping point for personality types, and it's a lot less, it's harder to get people to shift gears because they can be like singularly focused on whatever it is that they're doing. What do you think? Do you think that startups are more available to these types of goal settings and strategies?
Not necessarily. You know, again, when I look at the 6 that I've been in, there's a couple that were phenomenally successful, and it was because they were really open to processes like this. And we were very tight as a team, and there was a couple that didn't have a great outcome. And again, as the leadership team, you had individuals that didn't buy into what we agreed to. So again, you're allowed to go into the conversation and say, I may not agree, but if the team is going to do this, then I have to support it. So it goes back to understanding team dynamics a lot too. And regardless of the size of company, that holds true in every size that I've experienced. And, you know, I've also been in mid-sized companies where, you know, we have 4,000 or 5,000 employees. And I've seen where the executive team was like this. They were all on the same page. It went through the whole entire organization, and we could spin on a dime, and we were doing great M&As. And I've also been in one of those companies where nobody agreed at the top. And therefore, everybody else in all the departments were doing their own thing. So it really is about, again, you have to have agreement through the organization on what those objectives are. So I wouldn't say it's necessary to just a small team. It is that personality of that team, of how you want to be successful as a group together.
Let me ask some of our group project people. So if I'm looking at the ledger right, we have some people working together like on Open Sesame on some group projects. So maybe I'll just ask if anyone from Open Sesame feels brave enough to talk about the fact that you guys are working on projects together. Have you guys created similar kind of structural systems and goals that you guys are communicating with each other regularly and sharing? Are you guys at that point with your project development and how far you've come along? Anyone from Open Sesame? Don't be shy. I can call someone, but I don't want to do that. That's so like aggressive, such an aggressive tactic for talking. How about other teams like Roman Aerospace? I know you guys aren't necessarily working on shared projects, but I'm sure you guys are all working towards similar traction for the company. Are you guys working, are you guys communicating? Do you guys each know each other's like benchmarks, your weekly goals, your, you know, like what your like benchmarks are? Anyone? Semio, StyleBot, Pocket CFO, any of you guys, are you guys communicating, or is the answer no? Like, are you guys not yet at that point? Have you guys kind of solo missioned your projects?
So over at Open Sesame, me and Jing Wang, we're on the data analysis team. So we just had a meeting with the CEO, CTO, and our line manager yesterday. And we came to the conclusion, because what we were working on was just making a plan and how to do everything like technically from like a technical perspective. We just started talking about like KPIs and things like that, and how we're gonna have weekly meetings where we're ensuring we're heading towards meeting those goals that we set.
Thanks for sharing, Snehal. I'm happy you won that $25 gift card now. You are a real participant. Anyone else want to share? You know, it actually makes a lot of sense that some of the direction and project support and this type of communication would be coming from the founders or the technical leads on your project. So maybe perhaps you guys as students aren't necessarily orchestrating that, but is anyone else having similar experiences like Snehal, where there are other people on the startup team who are helping you guys to coordinate to make sure that everyone's on the same page? For instance, I know StyleBot, Laura, she continues, because she's a faculty, she works with students all the time, and so my assumption is that she's doing very faculty-esque communications with you guys and making sure you understand the objectives and what to do. Is that happening?
Yeah, at StyleBot, we use Trello, which is just like all common tasks, and then we always have like meetings where we talk about our shared goals and whether we've achieved them and like what we need to do.
Yeah, Trello. I know that there's a lot of success on Trello. Are there any other platforms out there that you guys are using that help you to organize and measure your goals out aside from Trello? Any other platforms teams are using? I think there's like, I think Asana is one, but I don't know if anyone's using that. Monday.com. There are plenty.
You know, the other thing to think about too, you know, we're at the beginning of the program, so this is a great point to get this vocabulary and knowledge about just asking the simple question of, again, what's our objective? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And just 2 or 3 things that you want to accomplish by the end of the program. But I'm thinking back to even when I was getting my MBA, to your original question, it's like, does this work well in smaller companies versus bigger companies? I mean, my MBA program was a cohort program, so I was teamed with 5 individuals, which at one point we had complete anarchy. You know, so again, think about your own team dynamics when you go back in the fall, you know, working on those types of projects and stuff. This process, and I encourage my son who's 23 and still in college, like every day, it's like, okay, what are you going to accomplish today? and you don't go to sleep until you accomplish it. I mean, that's what a startup feels like. That's what these projects feel like. I mean, every day you have to pick one or two things that no matter what happens and how many conversations, these are the things that I'm going to stick to, and I'm going to measure myself and constantly iterate and have conversations about that, how I've moved the needle. So as you're working with your founders, look at this framework and say, okay, maybe we can write it down this way, and then at the end of the program, you can show it back to them.
Do you have any practical advice for how to prioritize and kind of, you know how to set those types of daily goals? Is there like anything practical that you can suggest? Because sometimes the whole day, once you start it, can seem pretty overwhelming.
Oh, it is. I mean, how many times have you, again, here's my sticky notepad with, my list of things that I was going to do today. And sometimes I just write something down that I did so I can cross it off. So I feel like I accomplished something. That's in the world of sales and operations. I mean, that's every day. I mean, we called it managed chaos because we knew how to, embrace it and just get through it. As far as practical advice, again, I always try to make sure that we wrote something down on a whiteboard, and 2 or 3 things. And so each time we got together as a team, which I always had my team every single week, we would run through, okay, how are we, working together? What are we accomplishing? We would go back to those 3 things. And if nothing was touched on those 3 things, it'd be like, okay, you can't work on that project now. You have to work on this one, because we agreed that these are the 3 things are going to move the needle. So the advice is to try to get down to, again, what is that objective, and then how am I going to measure it, and then looking at it on a pretty regular basis. And again, you are completely allowed to say, all right, that didn't make any sense. 3 weeks ago, that made a lot of sense. Today, that didn't make any sense. And you can start again, but it's having that, writing it down, showing people, asking people, what am I doing wrong? And, you're all over the place. Why am I all over the place? Because you're just so excited about everything. You got to stop that, That's the fun part of a startup. I mean, it's when you've been through one and you've had this, I don't know, it's like a drug. I don't know how to explain it. It's just so much fun. And then all you want to do is do it again. And then you want to teach other people how to do it.
That's really great. It's also very different from, I don't know if you guys remember our first masterclass speaker who was basically saying, don't start a startup right now. Definitely enter the workforce. It's a different opinion. I do, from my experience with the teams, I see them really enjoy the kind of peaks of the things that they're able to achieve more than most people, because they're on a constant roller coaster. So the peaks need to carry them through the valleys a lot more than most. And so, yeah, I think making the decision to be an entrepreneur or a startup founder can be really reinforcing, especially if you can, on a daily basis, kind of like see the goalpost moving further and further along. The further you get away, I guess the smaller you become in a larger entity, it's a lot harder to really feel that goalpost move. I think in startups, everyone feels the goalpost move because it's kind of like a concerted effort. Okay, Dana, I mean, I don't know, does anyone have any other questions or any questions at all? You guys have been really quiet. I'm assuming that it's because it's a kind of dark day and we all are inside and not, I don't know, is it the sun? Cammie, do you have any questions? Put you on the spot.
I'm good, but it was really interesting to hear about. Thank you.
Yeah, Dana has been doing such great work in helping our teams to do exactly what she's been talking to us about, especially when it comes to go-to-market. Down the line, if you guys are interested in understanding a little bit more about go-to-market strategies and things like that, let me know. And I'm sure Dana wouldn't mind, you know, down the line giving you guys some very easy advice. Or maybe in the future at the garage, we can also do something a little bit more advanced or specific to go-to-market stuff, so you guys can learn about that as well. We're ending a little bit early today. It's 2:52. I'm just going to double back on my question. Is anyone having any technical issues with their projects that they want to voice it now midweek instead of waiting until Founder Friday? Is everybody doing okay with their projects so far? I will assume silence means you guys are fine.
Yeah, and I will just say in closing, I mean, I couldn't be more excited for you guys. I mean, the opportunity that you have to help these founders, I know they are unbelievably appreciative that they have the help, but you know, what it's going to open your eyes up to really is invaluable. You know, whether you go down the startup path or out into, you know, a larger company, having this knowledge is just so exciting. So happy for you.
All right, well, thanks again, Dana, for joining us.
Absolutely, anytime.
I will share Dana's deck and video on Slack so you guys can watch it again if you wanted to review it. I'll see you on Friday, Dana. I'll see all of you guys on Friday. I hope you guys enjoy your Wednesday. Keep up your good work on the projects and also on Instagram. It's been really, really great seeing you guys turn up. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.